Yes, welcome to the Square D Gaa Tactics and Analysis, a podcast with your host here, Paddy McGill, and the one and only Stephen O'Mara. Our two featured matches on this beautiful Tuesday in Munster. It's Kerry's win, the All-Ireland champions, of course, over the rebel county Cork. But first, in my own province, the last true bastion of Gaelic football, Stephen would disagree. Derry came to Ballybofey and they won out in the end by 3 goals and 14 points to 1 goal and 15 points. That is where we start the back-to-back Ulster champions. Of course, in both matches in round 2 of the Senior Football Championship. Stephen, you were with Donegal in the past couple of years, so you probably know them 10 times better than I do, certainly from a coaching point of view. One thing that caught the eye, though, at the weekend, although Donegal lost, look, people are taking a lot of positives from it, probably considering how the past couple of months have gone, really. But offensively, Donegal were pretty decent. Is that fair? But from a defensive point of view, not great. Could probably use a better adjective there. Derry, offensively, really, really consistent. They're still a really programmed side, choreographed side, however far they go this year.
Yeah, agreed. I suppose we'll go back to give it a context. We'll go back and give stats from a few previous games, going all the way back to a year ago with Donegal Derry, which will illustrate, as you're saying, that Donegal offensively in this game have come a long way relative to where they were at. So this goes back to last year again. I stated early in the year, this was probably offensively the most efficient game in the history of football, where Donegal had an expected score per 10 phases of 5.6 and Derry 6.3. This was not including extra time. Now, those figures looked outlandishly high last year. They're starting to look less outlandishly high this year. They'd still be the top, but not by the outlandish amounts they were last year. And to give a small background, the National League this year was an average of 10 points, 4 points per 10 phases. I ran 6 games now, 12 teams of top 12 teams in the championship so far, and that average has gone up to 5 per 10 phases. Now, that may be probably an element of summer instead of winter, but I think teams are evolving as they go. But if we give a context of those figures there, this is 12 months ago, Donegal 5.6, Derry 6.3 expected score. We look at Armagh, Donegal here in the league. Armagh 5.4, Donegal 3.8, and the actual score was actually 4.3 to 3. So that'll give a context how far it had fallen. We look here at Derry Monaghan, when Derry gave them a clip on a number of weeks ago. Expected score per 10 phases 5.6 to 4.4. Actual score 6.9 to 5. Then we look at Derry Monaghan, the drawn game. As I pointed out 2 weeks ago, the show, Derry were down a bit, not outlandishly, but a bit, to 5.2 per 10 phases. Monaghan, 4.1 expected, but scored 4.7. So the figures of the two Monaghan Derry games weren't that outlandishly different, but one shot. Derry had a good shooting day the first day and a bad shooting day the second day, and Monaghan vice versa. But we come back to Donegal and Derry to come full circle on this, and we'll see Donegal, who averaged 3.3 points per 10 phases in the league, compared to the 4 out of 10 average, had an expected score per 10 phases of 5.6. That's a massive, massive jump. And now Derry, however, still had 6.2. So what we'll see is Donegal are back exactly where they were last year, only on steroids, shall we say, or maybe more in tune with where football's at this year, where it has gone that more Roscommon Ulster style. I think everyone's catching on, to be honest with you. But we'll see. Donegal are now back where they always were, where they were for the 2 years I was involved. Offensively, well above average, but defensively, went massively below average. So if there's been progress made, there has, and we'll chat about that and how and why. Offensively, definitely miles up from the league and from even the down game, which is incomparable because they're a Division 3 side. But ultimately, Derry are still doing what they're doing offensively, and even more so than normal.
On the kickouts, both sides got them away pretty competently. Is that fair? They were both good off the restarts when they went short, but from Derry's slow transition was much better, wasn't it? And Donegal were probably better at the quick transition. Is that fair? Is it accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we look at since we started, I've reprogrammed this. This just shows the expected score. Just to give a context in tandem with that, like Donegal shot really poorly in this game. You see the expected score there. Donegal should have been up at half time, but they were 3 points down. It's not really until sort of 55, 56 minutes that Derry took off a little bit. And that was still essentially off a goal chance, which we'll look at and go, to put some football as the expected score. It's 5-4 to Derry at this stage, 25 minutes in. Michael Langan has a crystal clear one-on-one chance that you'd probably back him on. He was a soccer player as well.
Jason McGee, yeah. Jason McGee. Yeah.
Sorry, I said Michael Langan. I meant Jason McGee. Sorry.
Well,
Jason
the problem. They have the same skin fade, and even on commentary, even from distance, if it was Crow Park, you have to look at the number on the back because, and not only that, they're good friends, and they have a very similar body shape or something.
Yeah. No, I just had an elderly moment. I know well Michael Langan's injured. I know well it was Jason McGee. When you've tagged 500 ball contacts each, you know how they run. Believe you me. But that's the point. That goal shot goes in. Donegal are 2 up just before half time, and that expected score would have played out an actual score. But I suppose, it was really interesting. This comes back again. Look, this is really back to where it was last year for me with Derry and Donegal. If we look at the total kickouts, this is last year. Donegal got 17-3 off, scored 10 from the 17. They got hands on ball. Derry got 13-5, won 13, lost 5, scored 1-9 from the 18. They got hands on ball. So again, with Derry Donegal, for me, you just have to get hands on ball in the kick out. You have to try and stop the other team. And there last year, just the figures at the bottom are the ones. Pause that and have a look if you want. But the one at the bottom, Donegal were 0.47 of a point better off on short kickouts last year than long, and Derry 0.22, but Derry had expected a 0.41. We look at yesterday's figures. This is the issue for me. Donegal, and the acid test for me is short kickouts, not making the profits they made off the short kickouts last year. So you can see here they've made 0.15 more off the short than the long. Derry still up 0.31, better off the short compared to the long. We look at a bit more detail on that here. And we'll say yesterday in total, Donegal, and there's a real nuance in this. And this comes full circle on what I said about Derry during the year and what I felt about Donegal against certain teams. Donegal have won 16, lost 6. So their kick-out strategy was less successful. Still scored 8 out of 16. They got hands on ball. We look at Derry down below. Again, they've been less successful. They've won 14, lost 7. I don't think their kick-out is as good as it was, to be honest. Even in 2 or 3 weeks, maybe that's gone down a little bit. That's another point, maybe. But they've scored 2-8 from the 14. They've got hands on ball. So they've essentially got a point per hands on ball kick-out again. You just got to go full press. Donegal have gone less full press on Derry than they would have in the past. I think that's an error. The figures bear that out. But a real subtle nuance here is that when you separate, we look at the kickouts of the full back line and half back line. This is your real numerical acid test. Football acid test, barred out in numbers. This one is just to the half back line or full back line, and it counts if there was a turnover. Where it was a slow build-up play. Let me just make sure I have my figures correct on that. Sorry, I could be looking at last year there. Yes, sorry. That's last year's, if I'm not mistaken. But if we look to this one here, we'll see on the quick this is quick transitions off kickouts. Sorry, off all kickouts. And we'll see Donegal got hands on ball on 7 of the 10 kickouts where there was a quick transition afterwards. Donegal scored 4 out of the 7 on the quick transition. Small sample size, but still over 50%. Derry 1 out of 2 was too small a sample size. But I would always have felt that if Donegal could get teams on quick transitions, again, the figures bar out against the likes of Armagh, where Donegal got 14 kickouts with quick transitions last year and scored 8 points off them. And I think they were scoring something like 30% on the slower build-up play against Armagh, who had the best defence in the country at the time. But Donegal have got 4 from 7 off slow quick transitions. But we go back to the slow process play. Look where Derry are at, 1-6 from 12, where it was slow process play. So again, they're at 75%. Donegal only 3 from 9, if you look at those kind of browny red figures. So again, it's illustrating again. I would always have argued Donegal shouldn't really have tried quick transitions against Dublin and Kerry. It was only too likely to be turned over and caught with their pants down. Maybe Mayo that you play those 2 or maybe 3 in chess. But the more you can play quick transition against everybody else, Donegal had the footballers. And the evidence here again is that the quick transition, old school Kerry style football, shall we say, favoured Donegal. The process football favoured Derry. I made this point the different way after the Armagh Derry game. Monaghan played them man on man and went from losing 121 to 110 to drawing 14-all. Again, comes back to maybe against Derry, the less you can allow that game be processed, I think the better.
Okay. So Donegal hit the term, I hit moral victories and all that, but again, it has to be put in the context of how Donegal's season has gone so far up to now, both on and off the pitch. There were positives to take. However, from a coaching point of view, it did look like, you rightly said, and the figures are there, the stats are there to back it up. Every time Derry did go up, it did look like they were going to come away with something. And the goals, that old cliche, that old adage, goals win games. Donegal give away poor goals. If you're Derry, you're happy with how it manifested itself, but in particular, that first Donegal goal, from a coaching point of view, maybe technically, there's a lot that could be better there.
Yeah, there's a theory which may or may not have something behind it in Donegal, that because of the post-McGuinness era where it's all zonal or blanket defence, that and the clubs are kind of mirroring that, that players haven't learned how to defend technically because they don't find themselves in those positions in games. And there's probably something in that. My own view was and still is that I think Donegal need a block of 6 weeks in a winter on technical defensive training. And I suppose the point I used to maybe debate with Stephen Rochford when we were talking about comparisons, probably the best team 5 years ago and again currently of forwards capacity to technically defend is Mayo. So I would always have felt comparisons for Mayo and Donegal and how things worked or could work weren't, I didn't think it was a good laboratory, so to speak. And we look here, like as it would have been said when I was in Galway, that the Mayo boys, this was sort of said respectfully, they'd sooner take the head off you. The Mayo forwards would sooner take the head off you than let you come out with your own half of the ball. Whereas I would have felt the Galway forwards, bar Damien Comer, didn't have that same hunger or technical ability to defend. We look here, now this is off a turnover, and this is where the game is close enough. I think there's 2 points in it at this stage in Derry. And the issue you have, I would say Donegal, here's Jamie Brennan facing the ball. I would say Jamie Brennan would be the second most technically able forward in the Mayo side, behind Aidan O'Shea. But the issue here is, compared to, say, a Dermot O'Connor or a Killian O'Connor or whoever really at Mayo forward line, the defending, it's just too lax. You can see here, okay, I think is Keelan McGonigal, or sorry, it's Brendan McCole who's getting back to sweep. Even though it's a counter-attack, Donegal are reasonably well set up. But you see, straight away, I can see, this is Garrett McKinnon, I can see that Jamie Brennan's angles are half a yard off already. He should be half a yard further back, offering McKinless down the channel to McCole. And it's something that just outside of the specialist defenders, Donegal don't do well. You see Jamie being turned there. You can even see he turns his back, which means the angles and lines were probably wrong to begin with. Brendan McCole is the same side that Jamie is defending. And you can see from the footwork there, it's all wrong. And he goes by him far too easily. And it's a problem in Donegal, the technical defending outside of the specialist defenders. You can then see Brendan McCole has to come to him now, so there's no sweeper. McKinless manipulated the lines very well to give him his dues. And he's obviously one of the best offensive players in the country on the ball, carrying the ball. Now 4 Donegal players are drawn. Now, this may not seem, Donegal may think we've averted this, we've got away with it, but actually they haven't. And this is a key point of saying in modern football. What has that situation achieved? Donegal now have 3 sweepers, and they're not set up to defend with 3 sweepers. Nobody is. 2 sweepers maybe. And if you note, the 3 sweepers are Jamie Brennan, Conor O'Donnell, and Kieran Thompson. They're all offensive players. I wouldn't want I would never have recommended to Declan Bonner that any of those 3 guys would be your sweeper, because they're all offensive players. So you have 3 sweepers, which is a problem. They're all offensive players. If this was Hughie McFadden, Keelan McGonigal, and Ryan McHugh, you might say, you know what, these guys will get across the line quickly. But it's just a general issue that whatever way you set up with Donegal, there's probably guys who aren't natural defenders. But regardless, and this is what, I'm going to come on to this is what Paddy McBurty does for Donegal. He can bring the ball down here and suck in extra bodies before getting the ball across to the far side. So even though Donegal have averted the initial goal chance, it's created 3 sweepers. Derry bring the ball out. Again, I think it might be Ethan Doherty on that white line. He sees what's going on here. Let's him balance the numbers on the far side even more by making a dummy run through the defence. Has to be followed. Now you can see Keelan McGonigal beside him with a hand up. He's already trying to reshape and restructure, because he is a top class defender in all regards. But you see all of a sudden now, those 3 sweepers, 2 of them are trying to get across. Hughie McFadden's trying to get back into the sweeper position. It's 4v1 on the far side, and that doesn't include Oren Lynch. And here's where the problem arises. Now, the second problem, and I understand Brendan McCole was given a man-marking job with Shane McGuigan, and no better man to do it. I mean, he went under the radar last year for Daniel Flynn, Rian O'Neill. He broke both their hearts, amongst others, last year as a man marker. But I would always argue, and I argued this in Donegal last year, and it wasn't met with agreement, but I think it really illustrates it. The 2v1 rule, for me, overrides everything. If that was a soccer match and that was Lionel Messi outside there, and there was 2 or 3 lads goal side of you, I don't think that any professional defender in the world would be told to stay with Lionel Messi and leave fellas in behind you. But I think it looks to me like the understanding was here, you man mark at all costs. We can see the problem. There's a Derry man in goal side of him in the wide oval. There's another one with his hands up out the way. And as this ball comes in, right, Keelan McGonigal gets across to one of them. But as we see, another runner comes in and McCole stays man marking, which I assume was the instruction. And that man slips in and sets up the goal. Now, if you look at this, I've blacked out Brendan McCole there. For me, if he respects the 2v1 rule, he drops it, which he understands very well. He's obviously been told to mark Shane McGuigan at all costs. He would step into where that yellow oval is now. Yes, it would be a deeper arc than you would like. There's every chance if you hand pass to Shane McGuigan will come and have a shot from 42, 43 yards, maybe with a bit of pressure. 60, 70% shot maybe. But I think it would, consider they were stretched already, that's where the value will be at. But the 2v1 rule has got wrong. Hughie McFadden has now left 3v1. Again, I think maybe Hughie tried to shoulder a lot of responsibility here. Fat is in the fire. I think, he should really be just dropping off here and saying, you know what, you've earned your point, have it. But he tries to go in and make the interception. For me, he should drop inside the 14-yard line here, let them have the point, go 3 points up. They might even fall in love with the goal, make a mess of it, and you turn them over. But for me, the decision here, absolutely, again, 2v1 rule overrides everything to the point where you go back on the goal line and let 4 lads try and have a goal shot against the keeper and a defender, but goes out, gets caught. And even the goal, to be honest, it's probably a 50% goal shot, but little look up here, there's an open goal to the edge of the square. He didn't have to put in the roof of the net. So that's just an issue. Donegal technically there, for me, even though there were significant improvements, you look at that 6.2 points per 10 fades as expected score concession, and it was, I think, 6.7 actual score. Probably the little details there are alluded to in that piece.
There's a big cloud really though over Donegal in the past couple of months in terms of who's available, and it's caveat, www.caveat.com really, and that is the amount of personnel that are not involved, that are not on the side, that have walked away for various reasons. So that always probably must be mentioned. You couldn't almost pick an alternative team in Donegal. Club footballer lads who've walked away. I was in the car a couple of weeks ago, and there was a couple of lads arguing that debate. But look, Lang, Ryan McHugh, Mogan, the O'Donnells, the list goes on. Obviously, Murphy retired, so on and so on. But anyway, that being said, one guy is back, and thankfully, touch wood, he's staying injury free. He's the local man, Oisin Gallen. He's he's class. I actually just said to a guy yesterday, I haven't really seen him playing bad for Donegal. Every time, now granted, he's had a lot of injuries. He's just, his influence in Donegal going forward, I'm talking about next year as well, the year after, you get other guys back. You can build a forward unit, I would imagine, around this guy. He is class, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I pointed out that the stats off flipped for Donegal against Down when he came off the bench. O'Shea's been plagued by injuries. He's had hamstring injury after hamstring injury, and twice just out from championship. You know, I was there when he tweaked it or pulled it last year, and you could just see his face. You know, he's just been plagued. O'Shea knocked over 8 points from play the first time I saw him in a Freshers Football League match. I didn't feel so badly when he put on one of the great football displays I've ever seen. He scored 5 in the second half in the Sigerson semi-final in Carlow about 8 weeks ago. He looked like David Clifford out there. So he scored 6 from play. Definitely the personnel, there's no two ways about it. You know, and you've left out a few key players in that list. We can chat about it again.
Well, even squad players in that they're the guys coming off the bench.
Well, here's the key point. Even if you give
O'Donnell,
me,
for example, you mentioned Aaron Doherty before, just lads like that may not necessarily categorically be starting, but they're the guys coming. You know what I mean? It just
the issue here, and we'll wrap it up fairly quickly here, much as I'd like to go into it in detail. The issue for me is that even you pick any of those 5 lads, even if they didn't start, they'd be coming off the bench. And you look at that expected score chart and actual score chart, it was the last 15 minutes all the damage was done. Now, there is an issue there. For me, O'Shea Gallen looked like he was injured or fatigued on about 52 or 53 minutes. And if you look at the second goal, for me, O'Shea should have been taken off. Because now when there's live GPS, I don't know how succinctly they can show that. It was never my remit there. But the issue, and this is the issue that Aidan O'Rourke is facing, those offensive figures have absolutely gone up in tandem with O'Shea Gallen being on the field. Last quarter against Down, or last third against Down, the offensive figures shot up. This Derry game, they shot up. Obviously, Paddy McBurty came back in with 15 minutes left, but that, you know, didn't really have an influence the way things ran. But the issue is, O'Shea Gallen was a defensive liability for the last 15 minutes because he looked to me like he could feel the hamstring and he was minding himself. But on 2 or 3 occasions, the ball went down the field and O'Shea didn't follow a man, and one of them led to a goal. But you're robbing Peter to play Paul, or you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't, because if you take O'Shea off, all of a sudden are you back to looking at those offensive figures from the league. If you leave him on, he's a liability, but the other team have the ball. I felt explicitly maybe the management didn't see the incident I saw where he actually looked like he turned a hamstring again and stopped running. But he obviously minded himself for 15 minutes. And, you know, it was a defensive issue. Against Derry, you've one weak link that expose it. Not say it was all O'Shea, but for me, that just illustrates the issue of personnel. They're probably damned either way. Take him off, maybe the attack stifles, leave him on. You've a guy who basically looked injured or watching himself not to get injured. So that alludes to what is a bigger discussion we'll chat about again, the player they're missing. But look, expected score was a 2-point deficit. It is, even if the defence is still an issue, it was definitely progress.
Yeah, okay. So Donegal play Monaghan Saturday, and Derry take on Clare, who are mathematically gone. Okay, Colin Collins aside. So it looks like those 3 sides are going to be going through, probably looking at Donegal. If they don't beat Monaghan, are going to go into the preliminary quarter-final. And some positives, as stated. So maybe there's something in the next year or 2 for the mighty green and gold. Okay, on Saturday, that one was on Sunday. On Saturday, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the banks of the River Lee, Cork got a lot closer to Kerry this time. It finished Kerry 1 goal and 14 points. Cork 15 points. A bit of controversy in this one. And I know people are roaring and screaming at the TV screen. All that matters is the result. But Cork did win the expected score. Now, there's no trophy for expected score, but probably a bit like Donegal. And I'm almost using soccer parlance here because I hate the term. I don't think it applies to GAA as much, but taking positives, but Cork will take a lot of positives in terms of the expected score. They did win that. Was that just down to finishing, Stephen?
Essentially, yes, Paddy. And again, this is the second time we've looked at Cork this year, and it was the same story against Meath in the first game. Obviously, Meath are no Kerry, not in this day and age anyway. But, I mean, you see it straight up there. The expected score was Cork 16.8, Kerry 13.4. Now, look, Cork have shot 1.8 below expected score. Kerry have shot 3.6 above. So it's more to do with Kerry's excellent shooting than Cork's bad shooting, though it's a mix of both. But ultimately, yeah, now, I would generally assume Kerry will always score above expected score, but notably that hasn't necessarily been the case. Wasn't the case in the All-Ireland final last year, wasn't the case in most league games this year, and we're kind of starting to ask questions. Now, obviously, when you David Clifford throw balls over the back foot from outside the 45 over blocking hands, that's about an 8% shot for mere mortals, and David Clifford swings it over nonchalantly. So you can expect Kerry should be getting above expected score based on their talent. But ultimately, Cork had the better of this. Two things jump out here when we look at the Ulster context of that 5 points per 10 phases average. Great game of Ulster football. Expected score per 10 phases, Kerry 4.1, Cork 4.4. It's way down on that Ulster, Roscommon, Galway, nearly everybody except Kerry at this stage. Cork are nearly gone a little bit that way with Kevin Walsh. So that's notable, but obviously Kerry have scored 5.2 per 10 phases, whereas Cork only scored 3.9. But ultimately, Cork should go away feeling, even if Kerry get their 114 and Cork hit their expected score, it's a draw game.
Those general stats, look, to the untrained eye like myself, they're pretty lower than average across the board, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Well, look, again, the fact that Kerry have shot so well on the day.
Apart from that, yeah. Okay, apart from that one.
They're 5.2 per 10 phase. That's above any averages. That would have been off the charts before. That would have been above your 4.9 goal standard, but that goal standard is gone. But that was they shot so well. It wasn't that they created that per se.
One thing that wasn't below average, Cork's kickouts. I know you want to look on that, or sorry, do you have another point to make on that?
No, fire ahead. Yeah, no, there's the expected score I meant to bring into that, but you can actually see it there. And even in the last quarter, Cork really pulled away. But obviously, there's game context there. If Kerry were chasing it, maybe they would have done things differently. So that's all. Again, you say one. I'd always say one expected score. As you say, there's no medals for it. But you see there outside the 21 from play, they've scored 1, 2, 3, 4 from play and missed 7 from play, and even missed 3 of their 5 frees, whereas you see Kerry there, there's very little reds on that map. They did a very good day shooting. But I suppose before we go to the kickouts, just the point that, this is people are writing Kerry off. Kerry can still do this. This is old school football, ball out, head up already, straight down the line. And this is what we love. Ball out, Geaney comes out, wins it ahead of his man, jigs to the left, jigs to the right, throws a dummy to the right, back to the left. It's just only Kerry can play football like this. Clifford out in front, whole defence chases him, jigs back out, turns them all the other way over the bar. So I just thought I wanted to show that in. This is the football we love. I think the rules, is another discussion, probably need to change to make this style of football advantageous, because when you see the ability to do that and the expected score per 10 phases is lower than what Donegal and Derry are doing, I think maybe there's a bigger discussion there. But anyway, we'll move on, to kickouts. And I suppose it was interesting because you see here, this is the classic Kevin Walsh weight the field kickout. You can see it here. 6 bodies brought to one side of the field and an absolute chasm of space on the other side in the orange dotted section. Now, I always would have argued I felt it was underutilised with Galway. Damien Comer in that space could win them high or low, and I'd always point out with this weighted field, it actually makes more space for things like this. Clifford is trying to cheat the corner back, but the corner back is he's cheating by too much. Now, as it happens, Micheál butchers the kick out a little bit and gets away with it, but it's clearly caught inside the 21. But it just shows the principle. And this is what Kerry did do, and this is what Mayo did successfully to Galway in the 2019 backdoor game. On this one, they held the man in space to negate against the risk of ball over the top into that space. The Damien Comer ball, as I call it, but Cork don't have that kind of presence there. But again, the flip side of that is you've now got a 5v4 at the back, and Cork use it. So you're kind of, there's a lot to be said for weighting the field. It's a classic Kevin Walsh. He's taking it straight to Cork. Paddy Tally took it to Down in his first year there. But notably, Kerry didn't really push. You know, this is after a dead ball at the box of 6. One of them is out of picture. But what's crucial is that when Cork bring the extra body into the full back line, Kerry remain at a 3v4. So it's a very conservative approach, hands on ball. And notably, as soon as the ball is won, instead of pressing high, we'll see this Kerry man down here near the bottom of the screen. He's headed for home. And ultimately, that's what Cork got in the kickouts. They only had to go to that weighted field once, and that was when they were down a man. So interesting in that regard. But ultimately, back to the acid test. I've run it through the stats, the GA Pro Stats software. Cork got 15 kickouts short, scored 4, conceded 4 on the turnover. So ultimately, Kerry's conservative approach was probably, there was value in it because they conceded 2 on the 2 that went longer. Same the other side, by the way. Kerry got 15 short kickouts off, scored 4, conceded 4 on the turnover. That's probably a slight alarm bell for Kerry. And we'll see there. There's just your totals on a different element we won't go into now. But yeah, that was notable. That ultimately, while Kerry were conservative on the press, it probably made sense in the end.
One thing actually kept Cork probably ticking in this game, and that's probably a little bit disrespectful when we see how the final score, but you kind of do always feel that Kerry are going to win this game, however it manifests itself up. But it's sort of a random element turned things for Cork during certain stages, that being they were able to set up after every place ball that they were managed to slot over. Is that choreographed? Is that something that's total down to the training ground, is it?
I would have made the point with what's called implied odds. I knew these figures were here for a reason. With what's called implied odds, I'd have made a point that scores from dead ball are worth more than scores from play. I would have said about 1.3 points they were worth with implied odds before, because you get time to kick up, set up the kick out. They could now, that figure, with phases of possession to shots and scores going through the roof for the last 6 months, that figure is probably up around 1.5, 1.6. And notably, if we look at these are the kickouts for each team from play when the kickout came after a phase from play. Cork got 12 out of 12, scored 4 points. Kerry got 12 out of 12, scored 2 points. These are the figures after dead ball or delays in play, be it a substitution or an injury. Cork still got 5 out of 5, but Kerry won 5, lost 4. And if you look at that, the long ones, which is the bottom mid plus 12, Kerry got 6, had to go long 6, 1, 2, lost 4, conceded 3 on the 4 they lost. And at points where Cork really rattled them, particularly around the 3/4 mark, that's what happened. It was dead ball. They got forced long. So it was quite random. In a way, Kerry would have been better off conceding scores from play and getting the quick kick out off. And when Cork really looked like they were getting back to 2 points, what happened? Score from play, quick Kerry kick out, hands on ball, and they never just got back again.
Okay, fair enough. Overall, Cork's defence, you were impressed. You weren't with them, weren't you?
Yeah. There's that 4-4-4 setup, incidentally, on the kick out. You'll see Kerry have nowhere to go but into the melting pot. Yes. But yes, to go on to the defence, this had Kevin Walsh written all over it. You'll see here, Kerry, and this looks simple, but Kerry, it's 2 40-45-yard passes across the arc. That really stretches the arc. And that's where you get your overlap on the far side. You see the Cork man at the front of the arc here. This mightn't look like much, but he leaves an unmarked man, but it's in the yellow oval, but it's away from where the ball is going. And you can see him pointing to the next man, which is Sean Powder, who's in front of him, to tuck in behind him. He now gets across, but you'll see on the crossover, not every team, and actually one of Donegal's goals was conceded on this because there was no communication who was taking who. Joe Brawley kind of satirised Kevin Walsh, and all they do was stand and point in 2018, but that underlies the theory of what's going on and the really defensively structured play. And I see Galway 18, Kevin Walsh all over this. There's a sweeper in place despite the quick crossover. There's communication from the last phase. There's communication on this phase. They both know who's marking who. Now, compare this to some of the stuff we looked at recently with Kerry's technical defender, which we'll look at briefly again. Really difficult situation to defend. Pop pass into Sean O'Shea, who'd scored 4 points at this stage already. Look at the Cork defender facing the Kerry man. As that 1-2 is there, look at the number 12. Look at his defensive positioning. It's perfect. There's no 1-2 ball. Anything less than meticulous defending there. And that's Kevin Walsh's bread and butter. It's all over his website. The invisible game, I think. Because it's these little things that go unseen. What are Kerry doing? They're kicking the ball out backwards under pressure. So just I thought I saw Kevin Walsh all over that defence. And again, you're looking at Kerry. Obviously, they kicked outrageous scores with 4.2 points per 10 phases. In the current context, that's a really good defensive performance by Cork.
I was away for the weekend myself. My wife booked us a weekend away in the middle of championship season. Something, to be fair, she's never did before, okay? So we'll let her off this once, okay? So, but the phone nearly blew up on Saturday night, as usual. Twitter at its best, the penalty. And seems pretty 50-50, which I know Twitter is never a metric for.
Yeah, well, look, we've
was it a penalty for you? It was a huge moment. It's obviously the score that in the end is what separates the sides. I'm awful on rules. I'm poor on rules. It's something I'm really poor on. I'm just not great at them. I think the GAs. I think it was Eamon McGee said before. You have a decision and you ask even referees. You ask 50 referees, and they don't know. So it's they would be separated on something. So it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's a key one, and I want to spend 1 minute on it because if you have 3 minutes, I want to go back on the Kerry defence, which I've been harsh on recently. I want to show.
I was going to ask you,
but then we go back to that as the last point. If we've 3 minutes, we'll go back to that. For me, look, let's look at this penalty in 60 seconds if we can. The rule is a bit ambiguous. It's more crystal clear in soccer. And I think that's been an issue with the GEA in general. But I think it was good that David Goff is aware, because I actually had to ask this question recently. 2 intercounty black and white, black card penalties outside the box were ignored. And I actually had to ask the question in a stats forum, does this rule still exist? Because intercounty referees seem to have forgotten. So I think it's really, it shows, I suppose, why David Goff is considered the best referee in the country, that he is applying the rule. I think it's a really key rule. I proposed a similar motion in 2008 in my own club to change the rules. Never brought it to the county board due to internal politics, but it's a great rule. But for me, he's not by Sean Powder here. And he has the number 6 and the number 10 cutting across. Now, we're saying, well, he'll get by him and he'll hand pass the ball over to the open goal. For me, there's far too much assumption that he's going to do that. He probably will, but for me, it's a black card if he's through on goal himself, or if there's a junior B hand pass to the back post. That's not a junior B standard hand pass to the back post. He's got to ship the tackle from Powder. Powder hasn't fouled him yet. His hand is goal side. If it was just the 2 boys and the other Kerry, the 6 wasn't there and the 10 wasn't there, maybe. But I don't feel that that's a clear goal. I don't think it was crystal clear enough to make a decision that ultimately turned the game. Well, I think it's great that the rule has been revived because it's a key rule in the game. I just think, it has to be beyond all reasonable doubt, and I just don't believe that it was.
Yeah, Derek Lynch on Twitter, he was replying to Fintan O'Toole. I like this one, and he said, Fintan O'Toole said there was another defender covering, and he says, but Derek Lynch of Clare FM, he said, but when you have a rule that includes an element of the referee's interpretation, it stops being a rule and becomes more of a guideline. So
yeah, it's a bit like the offside in soccer. It's a mad rule, but it is very explicit that if you're not interfering when the ball is played, you're not interfering. I disagree with that rule, but it's black and white. I think the rule has to state that the goal chance is for the man with the ball. And then it's not a guideline, it's a black and white. Anything else, you're leaving tactical decisions to a referee who's not qualified to make them, in my opinion. But look, that's...
Yeah. Fair point. I just threw that in there because I know people were going. I threw that in before looking at both sides' defensive shape, etc. Because if I left that out and I was way out sunning myself for the day, and people were like, "It's the key moment in the whole bloody match." So, looking at Kerry 100%. From a defensive point of view, okay, structurally, I know you said to me before, structurally, he says quite good, but technically not great. So maybe they're getting things right on the training ground, but the players are not implementing it to optimum levels. Is that right? Am I talking?
Yeah. Well, look, I want to make this point. I've been very critical of Kerry's technical defending the last couple of weeks while Conor was in. And I suppose actually I'm going to make this key point. But I suppose they paid Paddy Tally the big bucks to go from Tyrone down to Kerry. And I'm going to show, because I actually did a piece on it and got edited due to time constraints a couple of weeks ago. So I want to go through. But briefly, I suppose, if there's a coaching element here, I want to point out, wrap this up in 2 minutes. This exact incident happened to me against a guy called Paul O'Donoghue that played hurling for Dublin on the training ground in football when I was 18 or 19. Paul O'Donoghue was coming at me like this, and I was standing square like the Kerry man. Sorry, let me get that up on the screen. Sorry. See the Kerry man here, Cork 25, Kerry man, again, it's one of the cornerbacks facing him. He's square on. I faced this exact situation when I was 18 or 19 on Paul O'Donoghue, Baldy as he was known in O'Toole's due to his lovely blonde ponytail. What's the problem with standing square like this? Hand pass, the oldest schoolyard trick in the book. Hand passes over his head and gets to the other side. And I felt right, Baldy made a right clown out of me on that incident. And I remember going home thinking, I have to be able to do something better than what I've done. And that's actually where my theoretical thinking with technical defending began, by Paul O'Donoghue pulling that trick on me, making me look like a clown. And that's what I started working out. Angles, lines. How do I get myself in a position if he hand passes that over my head? I can turn and get in front of him. You show him the line. So the Kerry technical defending is still horrendous. Let's not make any mistakes. But we're talking about Paddy Tally. The structures are brilliant. And if we look here, this looks like a classic setup. They've got their tag a man plus one more or less. Cork coming across. But what Kerry are doing, and this has Paddy Tally stamp all over it. And this wasn't incidentally the Galway way, because that was Kevin Walsh's defence in 18. It was a more passive defence like the Cork one we've just seen. But this is a more proactive, hunt you down defence. I'd be coaching here, generally speaking. Everyone stay with their own man. You've got your plus one or pass them on if there's a crossover that you can pass on. But Jack Barry spots, and I presume this looks to be like it's coached. The pass is less than perfect. Cork man is stretching, darts off his own man to double up. We're now into chaos territory. Hand pass out to a man on the sideline who's about to get boxed in. He hits a pass under pressure. What do we see? Gavin White is coming out off the man coming out from the full forward corner forward position. He sees that there's pressure. He leaves his own man and goes to the 5. He's under pressure. Paul Murphy leaves his man. So they're smelling blood, contact, hit to the ground, turnover. See it here again. They're smelling blood, and this is obviously coached. So this is what Paddy Tally's on the big books for. You smell the blood when there's an ounce of a bad pass, and you leave your own man. See here? I think this is O'Connor. Now, this is borderline. I'd be looking to say, whoa, you're about to leave the number 5 slip in there. But he spotted the 5, has his back turned to the play. I'm giving it the benefit that this is brilliantly timed, and it's coached. Now it's a double up. Now I'm looking at this saying, number 5 is in there in a grade 2 breach. The hand pass is played in, but it probably is a JJ Okocha. It probably looks exciting, but isn't, because it forces the ball up in the air. Cork man is turning, waiting for the ball to come down. What do we have? Ty Marley smells the blood, darts in, and it still maybe looks exciting, but it's probably a JJ Okocha. You've got Foley and Marley now either side of him. Foley gets a good hand in. The far hand, technically mistaken again, should be the near hand. You can see the near hand nearly on his back. But still, because the heat, that probably encapsulates everything. Ironically, the technical piece of this is still wrong, even though he gets the ball. But it's the structures that have put the heat on the ball to force him to turn. So I think important to point that out, the difference between the technical defending, which is lacking, and the structural defending, which is brilliant. And that has Paddy Tally's mark all over it.
Okay. Fair enough. I think we'll wrap it up. I was going to ask you just about general state of play. The structures, the format and all that, that's a 5-hour podcast. But
yeah,
just in 90 seconds to 2 minutes, okay, we see empty terraces. Seems to be a theme. My own view is that because bloody there's 500 teams coming through from every group, and I think it's more diluted. I think it's more sanitized. Yeah. I remember Miguel Delaney said a couple of years ago when he was talking about soccer, European football, and this new Super League and all that, he says now it's just all about bloody content. So now it just seems to be more games, more games. I do believe that it's a little bit diluted, okay. But in saying all of that, does this new format mean that people are saying, well, there's no... Every week I talk to somebody, there's somebody new fancied for the All-Ireland, okay? It was Dublin a couple of weeks ago, it was Kerry, Mayo, Galway, so on, and then Tyrone, so on, can take out a big scalp. Our team's not just at 100% because of the new format.
Yeah.
Or do you think you know what I'm trying to say?
As I said before, Paddy, there's 2 points. We won't know until the end of the championship. My view was, if I was a manager, I'd have put a B team in the provinces. I didn't see the value. I think we've seen that come true. Mayo and Roscommon have done better not winning the province. Galway are doing fine as well. But you've all of that. I think that's a key point there, that there wasn't really any value when you knew that with respect to them, that Clare and Sligo were going to be seeded. All of a sudden, we're going to be second seeds. All of a sudden, being seeded didn't have that much value unless you got an unlucky draw. Ultimately, it's all foreplay until the last 12. And I don't think anyone's going to really care, because I think we could all have predicted the 4 teams going out in the groups. I think they made a major own goal. In summary, they were reactionary to the fact that there was a mathematical unlikely scenario in the Super 8s that both years one of the groups had a dead rubber in the last game. A, that's generally unlikely. It's not a 50% chance. B, they were both in Dublin's group, where Dublin were beaten all around them at the time. C, I have to call it, but I'm really sure we have more non-events in the last game now because there's 3 going through instead of 2 than we would have had. I don't think there would have been a dead rubber, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check that. 2 going through would have been a brilliant form. I'm questioning about the whole provincial thing, but 3 instead of 2 was a major own goal. It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out. I think it was a disaster. I think no one's going to really care until the knockout stages. Yeah,
the fact that Kerry lost their first game, even if they did lose to Cork, you're going, they're still going to trickle through, but that would have been, it just would have made way more knife edge to those games. And
of course it would.
I'm just a huge GA anorak. Yeah. Even I'm kind of going at the weekends. You're just kind of sleepwalking through them. You're watching them, but you're not at the edge of your seat.
Armagh would have to go and beat Galway.
Yeah.
You know,
but in what other?
You look at score differences between 2 games. You'd have drama. You'd have excitement. Now we know what's happening. Nobody cares.
In what other competition in the world would it be an advantage to lose? I mean, like Mayo, total advantage. I mean, they could have went traveling Southeast Asia on a shoestring for a couple of weeks and still come back fresh.
Yeah,
for
100%.
But anyway, look, it is what it is for now. We've probably gone over time. Round 3 of the Senior Football Championship in 2 weeks' time. Just Kerry play Louth, Mayo play Cork, Galway, Armagh, Tyrone, Westmeath, Dublin, Sligo, Roscommon, Kildare, Derry, Clare, and Monaghan. Donegal this weekend coming. We have the Tailteann Cup preliminary quarterfinals down. Play Longford and Newry, for Manalish in Brewster Park, Carlow, New York in Netwatch Cullen Park, and Offaly, Wexford in O'Connor Park in Tullamore. Stephen and myself will be back on Monday evening. We will be dissecting 2 matches from the Tailteann Cup. Happy enough for that, Stephen?
Yep, that's it.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks a million to all our viewers. We hope you're enjoying the beautiful sunshine wherever you are, from Mallinhead to Mizenhead. Stephen and myself, as I said already, alluded to, we will talk to you next Monday evening. Enjoy the rest of the weather for the week. Bye for now.